SMEs, are these kind of small businesses. They make up half of the turnover of the private sector and about a third of all UK emissions. So it's actually a huge area of influence. Because of that, there's like now kind of increasing pressure from everybody to act and make choices that are based on sustainability. I guess also ignoring sustainability only tends to increase the risk to your business and to the industry. This image here is from the World Economic Forum's Global Risks. So if you look at your business in the long term, which you should be doing, a lot of those things are going to come down to sustainability. So the image here says climate actions just for the big businesses, but actually it's not something that's just impacting the big businesses. This legislation might kind of, that tidal wave might hit them first, but it comes down then on all businesses. And taking action now, I guess, will, for a metaphor, kind of build up your flood defences against those things by having a look at that and starting to consider it in your business now. So why haven't a lot of businesses already prepared for this? You can see these warming stripes are quite a nice representation of how temperatures are rising in Leicester. We see the impacts of things like floods, high heats in summers, which impacts kind of supply chain, particularly in this area, agriculture as well. This British Business Bank report shows some of them, a high one being costs, obviously, a lot of other things in there about not having enough information, not knowing what to do. Based on those reports and lots of other reports and research and some of our experience working across these large scale projects, particularly in the Leicestershire region, we've kind of broken down or captured from what we're told time and time again from SMEs, these kind of top 4 challenges that tend to showcase it all. So looking at how to actually use your influence and influence those pieces that might be kind of outside your direct control, looking at your supply chains and your customers, how to actually create a successful plan that brings together the stuff that you're doing and meets those legislative needs. So some of the things that we've seen from businesses that have taken action, I think it's quite useful to share. This organisation, Digital Concepts Engineering, they're based in Hinckley in Leicestershire, but similar stories to lots of other businesses. They have looked at doing heating controls, they've looked at their building efficiency. As a manufacturer, I think those are quite relevant areas for them. They've looked at their lighting and heating, they've invested in those, they've seen a payback in costs, but also in carbon savings when they've worked that out for their organisation. Another organisation I think crops up a lot when we look at case studies of sustainability initiatives, Crystal Doors in Manchester. They definitely shout about what they do a lot. They've also looked at kind of energy efficiency upgrades. They're a manufacturer of kind of vinyl wrapped doors for like kitchens and bathrooms, but they've then gone beyond that and had a look at where they can influence others. So they've implemented carbon literacy training, which is an accredited training from 2019 for all of their staff. They've also, declared a climate emergency and had a look at what their influence can be to educate their customers and their supply chains and the people that they work with. Generic advice and one size fits all things do often fail, and that's why we're kind of left in a position where SMEs know they need to act, but again are facing these challenges and not quite sure what to do. A vast majority of those are actually micro businesses, so some of those things that you see on generic advice is not going to be relevant for them, and a very small proportion of those businesses are large businesses, but often a lot of that kind of sustainability tailored advice and legislation is targeted at them. So I do understand why it's difficult for other types of businesses to see themselves in that and kind of work out what it is that they can do. Couple of different things, like if you're a B2B business, you can maybe, focus on your supply chain sustainability, maybe efficiency improvements, meeting client expectations. But B2C customers, B2C businesses are going to have a very different influence and potentially look more at kind of what that customer perception looks like, maybe what their packaging looks like, what's my carbon footprint, how do I look at this? But a lot of SMEs, a vast majority of SMEs haven't worked that out. So it's very hard to benchmark that against. And it does vary a lot depending on the type of organisation. You can see here this digital agency vastly surpasses the carbon of this coffee roaster and finds it in a lot of different areas. So you can see the kind of dark blue area, that first one there is scope 1, so that's gas emissions. Scope 2 emissions are coming from electricity, so there's quite a bit of a direct impact, a bit more for the digital agency, more on the electricity for the coffee roaster. But what is quite similar for both of them is that the vast majority of their emissions are actually in scope 3, which is all of their purchased goods and services, any travel related to their products or their services, all of their waste, any of their investments. It's kind of everything else that's not their direct impact. And this carbon footprint misconceptions image, I think, highlights that quite well. It's a little bit small on my screen. Hope you can see it a bit easier. But essentially, it's looking at people's misconceptions or conceptions about which areas are large for their carbon footprint or what are some big things that they can do. Recycling always comes out so high because it's a very visual piece that you can see as being, you know, unsustainable because it's not being recycled. But when it comes to carbon footprint, and that's not necessarily the only area of sustainability, but when you're looking at your pure carbon impact, it's a very, very low part of what your business's carbon footprint would be. And there's actually a lot more impact in things like travel, which is that second last one there, not having a car. Things like travel are going to have such a more high impact, and they're in this kind of pink, larger scope 3 section, but is often kind of misunderstood by SMEs. One thing you can do to make your business more sustainable is to embed sustainability into your decision making within your business. As a business owner, as somebody, you know, with who works in a small organization, you're making decisions constantly in your business every day. What type of thing works well for your business? You're making the most benefit for your business in all of your decisions. The way you can have the most impact on sustainability is not, you know, do this one action, it will reduce your carbon. It's actually to think about sustainability as part of those decisions. You know it best, it's your own organization. The more that you can think about sustainability and embed that as part of those processes, the more tailored to your organization that will actually be. And you'll be able to take this, like it says, meaningful action. So I think that's the operative word here. It's you can take sustainability actions. There's a lot of resources about what type of thing you can do, but how do you actually make that meaningful for your organization? And the way to do that is to embed it into your decision making. Once you've got that embedded sustainability, like it says here on the right hand side, it will transform your core business activities. You'll be able to make sustainability kind of a pure part of the normal way of working and a part of kind of everybody's job. Going back to those challenges that we talked about, this method, I guess, demonstrates success against those challenges. So the first one about knowing the right thing to do. If your employees will consider sustainability when they're making these everyday decisions, then they'll feel, you know, empowered to take these small, meaningful actions, even though they're not these large-scale business changes. And the company then builds a culture of this, not just sustainability, but actually authentic sustainability for what really works. And that's the right thing to do in the end. When it comes to influencing your supply chains and your customers, if your employees factored sustainability into those conversations that they were having around procurement and sales and customer interactions, you're then pushing, just by the very essence of including it as part of your procurement work and as part of your kind of your guidance around that, you're pushing for greener materials, for ethical sourcing. You're at the same time then strengthening your brand identity. When it comes to creating these successful plans, rather than kind of starting from, okay, what's a plan that I can put together and how do I make what I've done try and fit with the template of this plan? If you actually just integrate sustainability considerations into your existing decision making, into your existing job roles, your teams will then be able to align sustainability with their business goals. If you make it part of people's jobs, and the business goals are obviously aligned to people's jobs, then sustainability will become that through that action. And then the last challenge about getting buy-in from different colleagues or different senior leaders in the organisation. If your employees are kind of actively considering sustainability in, like I say, their kind of day-to-day decisions, then they're much easier to communicate the business benefits of that because they're already making all of those decisions and weighing that up from the people who are kind of an expert in that area, rather than one sustainability person having to understand how that works in every area of the organisation. You've got everybody who's already an expert in those areas of the organisation thinking about sustainability. They're not huge things you need to implement in an organisation. It's just the decision-making aspect that can actually really authentically improve what sustainability ends up looking like in your organisation. And it doesn't just come from a generic advice, but it is one thing that you can do. But it will tailor that specifically to how that works best for your organisation. Again, it's not going to work, the engagement across your organisation, if it's just one person's responsibility. And sustainability really does need to be aligned with those kind of core business practices in order to really see how that works in the organisation. And if you approach it with the measurable things that work well for your organisation and the small changes that you can put in place to really engage people in how to actually do this, and factor it into existing things. You're not tacking on new work for everybody. You're factoring sustainability into the existing work that you're doing. You will get there, but don't feel like you have to try and put everything in place at once, because none of it will work properly. Because you don't need to be an expert in sustainability to know how to do all of this. You need to understand your own business and then put sustainability considerations into that, which you don't need to be an expert in order to do. So that's why it works much, much better. In terms of engagement strategies, there's a tipping point. You only need 25% of change to create a cultural change. We also have the first thing that I think we'd point people towards really is our diagnostic tool on our website. So if you are at those kind of early stages where you think, I know I need to do sustainability, but what do I actually do? There's a QR code here or the link, or you can find it on our website.